Hi, I'm Charles with AniCap. Previously, Yuji was reincarnated as a tamer and found several slime that he would come to tame, quickly learning several skills in the process. After proving him and his slime's power, they would be asked to help fight off a powerful dragon that threatens to end the world. The story continues after Yuji has decided to not waste any more time and go to stop the continuously growing dragon. He searches for the perfect attack against it and settles on the Hellfire of Decimation. Yuji transfers the spell through a slime, but the attack doesn't do much, and Yuji must brace himself for the dragon's powerful counter. The slime are quick to point out that the dragon is still growing, and Yuji realizes that it must be destroying the forest to absorb its magical energy. The slime are shocked to see that Yuji has decided to attack with a tiny sword, but he is confident that he can deal a powerful blow if he concentrates the Hellfire of Demise through the dagger. Approaching the dragon proves to be difficult, but Yuji comes up with a creative way to block its attacks. A few more spells allow him to close the distance, and Yuji manages to stab its eye. He is confident the concentrated spell vanquished the monster, but is shocked when it lands an attack on him. After nearly dying, Yuji sees that his attack put his magic power in the red, and his HP is almost depleted. He must continue to defend himself against the dragon's relentless attacks, but Yuji is sure that he can defeat it with one more hit. Sacrificing more HP, Yuji uses an attack to drop it from the sky, and calls on Wolfie to help close the gap. His plan works perfectly, and this time Yuji makes sure to deal devastating damage. The slime cheer their tamer's victory over the dragon, and they all head home. The next morning, he is informed that the skies have cleared and the blue dragon has been defeated by a mysterious person. The priest was able to confirm it by the voice of God, and so he has already left the town. Rayard explains that Yuji can always ask the guild for help, seemingly knowing that he had fought the dragon but doesn't reveal it. Later, the girls are sad to hear that Yuji must continue on with his life as an adventurer and leave the town for another. They recommend that he go to a town called Ricardo as it has the best food and great weather, but Yuji wants to make sure nothing strange is happening there first. He explains that he would like to avoid any more world-ending dragons, and the girls promise that it's peaceful. On his way to the town, Yuji thinks about how it would be best to hide the way he uses his power through the slime when the thought is interrupted by an urgent message from Dryad. However, when he arrives, she reveals that she just needed his help picking mushrooms that were left behind in the area where the dragon was defeated. Dryad plans to use them to make potions that are able to restore his magic power to what it was 10 minutes prior, and so Yuji gets his slime to quickly help out. She gets to work on a potion but is disappointed to see that the color isn't right, and determines that something must be wrong with the mushrooms. They are too powerful and she needs some clear water to fix it. Yuji uses a combination of science and his abilities to begin distilling water, and he points out how the potion is the same color as the magic stones they found earlier. Dryad then remembers when they first met and how Yuji helped her recover after having her power drained by one of the stones. After dispelling the stone, Yuji defeated the monsters that emerged, and Dryad determined that she owes her life to him. She then explains that the stone shares a similar color because they must both get their power from the dragon's grace. It is a power left at the site of a fallen dragon, but it is neither good nor evil. The distillation is complete and Dryad finishes the potions. She then heads back to the Dryad forest and Yuji continues with his journey. However, they soon come across a small village where several eerie people seem to live. Someone recommends that they stay the night since the fog makes traveling dangerous. When he declines, the man then requests that he join them for a meal, but Yuji declines that as well. The man wonders what business he has there, but Yuji explains that him being there was not intentional. The village is called Messiah, and the villagers are not used to seeing travelers. Yuji leaves but can't help but feel something was off, and we are shown that he is correct. The man from the village speaks with a mysterious person and explains that Yuji was only a tamer, so they don't need to worry. They discuss the plan to extract the dragon's grace from the canyon the next day, and the man vows to cleanse the tainted world. Yuji's group reach the end of the forest and are shocked to find that the weather is dramatically different there. Yuji finds a spell to keep himself warm and they finally reach Ricardo. A guard is surprised to see that a tamer has arrived and explains that the chill came out of nowhere 10 days ago, taking the lives of a few villagers. The guard recommends a place to eat and Yuji can't help but notice how empty the town seems. Unfortunately, the tavern is closed and the worker explains that they won't be opening anytime soon since they have no firewood to cook with. Yuji won't be denied delicious food and decides to get firewood. The girl explains that fresh cut wood needs to sit for a year, but again, Yuji is undeterred. However, he is uncertain of which tree would be best to chop down, and his friends are just as clueless. He summons an axe and surprises himself with its destructive power when he cuts down several trees. Yuji then searches for the perfect spell and finds one called Slime Moisture Absorb. The slime have never heard of such a skill, but luckily it works, and the firewood is instantly dried. After returning, the girl calls the chef, but he determines that the wood is far too dry and will burn too strong. Yuji uses a moisturizing spell, and the chef is shocked to see that it has now become the most perfectly dried piece of firewood ever. Yuji shocks them with the large quantity of firewood they retrieved, and the chef promises to cook his finest dish. Yuji then enjoys the greatest work of culinary art he has ever tasted, and the chef reveals that his best dish is actually a stew that takes a while to make. Yuji says that he will return the next day, but the waitress thinks they should use the firewood for warmth. He says it won't be a problem though and leaves. Yuji heads to the town's guild and takes the job of retrieving firewood. He is instructed to visit the firewood leader Wodka first though. Wodka would then explain that the town needs 5 tons of firewood a day, but they are unable to keep up with the demand. Yuji asks about the nearby Messiah village, but he explains that the place has been deserted for some time. Wodka wants to see what Yuji can do, but asks that he not push too hard since he looks a bit weak. Of course, he and the others are shocked when Yuji chops down several trees in an instant. Yuji then goes on to cut them into perfect pieces and leaves Wodka stunned once again when he has his slime dry them. They all return and Wodka makes sure to credit Yuji and his slime for their work. The girl explains that she once heard of a mighty beastmaster who used slime to transport things as well, and Yuji thinks about asking the father more about this person later. She is then shocked to hear that Yuji still has 3 days worth of firewood for the whole town still inside the slime. He decides it isn't enough though, and the girl is worried that he might be pushing himself too hard. Yuji is glad to see that people of this world seem to care more about each other than his previous world, and gets to work. The next day, Yuji and his crew finally get to enjoy their promised stew, and Yuji deems it a dish worthy of the gods. The chef once again reveals that the stew isn't even his best dish. Their herb field is plagued with monsters, not allowing them to have proper ingredients, and Yuji wants to take care of it immediately. He has his slime search out the beast, and they confidently begin to track it down. However, once they find it, they determine they are outmatched, and Yuji sends them some magic. After defeating the beast and regaining their confidence, the slime head out to defeat more boars. They find a strange object, and not even Dryad can determine what it is. When Yuji touches the orb, it seems to absorb his magic, and they determine it must be a dragon's grace that is absorbing the energy from the area, creating the cold climate. After purifying it, the slime locate more, and Yuji goes on to purify 108 orbs in total. They head to the center of where all the orbs are found, but don't find anything out of the ordinary. Yuji is confident that something is off though, and has everyone get away from there. Dryad is sad to hear that Yuji plans to destroy the forest, but finds relief knowing that it will grow back, and they must find who is responsible for leaving the orbs. Yuji unleashes his Hellfire of Demise, clearing a large portion of the forest and revealing a hidden entrance. His group can't believe Yuji is going through all this trouble for a small town he just found, and he explains that he has a good reason: the exceptional food. They descend into the underground cavern and some of the slime split up. Yuji has Dryad go back to the forest to keep watch and eventually finds the strange machine. Yuji knows that technology like that is too advanced for this world and begins to wonder if the magic stones are being made there. A couple guys show up, panicking about some type of malfunction, and decide they must report to someone named Javier. Yuji wants to proceed with caution, but his slime are too excited about the journey, so Yuji applies stealth to the slime and leaves the search to them. They find the 2 men and follow them, but only end up at what they think is a dead end. However, after using some teamwork, they make it through and find a ladder that leads them above ground. Yuji follows them above ground and finds that the path has led them to the Messiah village, the place with all the strange villagers. Their capes make Yuji think they might be followers of the Blue Moon of Salvation, and they must have moved in on the abandoned town to make the stones there. The men report that an explosion has caused damage to their equipment and have left several stones unfinished. Javier gathers other members and explains they must search for more magic ores. He thinks that no human is capable of making an explosion that large and assumes it must have been some type of meteor. Regardless, Javier wants them to find as many of the 108 ores they can and instructs them to eliminate anyone that sees them. Their equipment is damaged, so he plans to destroy the village and leave anyway. Yuji can tell that the group are more dangerous than ever and decides to act. He has some of his slime encircle the area and others search the village to find anyone that might be innocent. They don't find any, and Yuji then has them pack up all the books and documents they can find. The slime capture a couple of the robed men, but they are quick to take their own lives. The slime inside solve a puzzle that allows them entrance into a room filled with treasure, but a robed man arrives soon after. He is shocked to see that everything is gone and informs Javier, who has also just found out that their scout team is missing. Yuji wonders for a moment if he should just hit them all with the Hellfire of Demise, but decides to wait. Javier is shocked to hear that no trace has been left of the scouts, and determines that the explosion must have been an attack after all. Javier explains that if they are all eliminated, a cleansing flame is set to erupt, cleansing the entire world. Yuji listens through his slime and is glad that he didn't destroy the place. Javier determines that their only course of action is to strike back, and they perform a shocking ritual that brings the cleansing flame he spoke of. Yuji tries a combination of spells and manages to evacuate his precious slime. Unsure of how strong the eruption will be, Yuji uses several barriers to enclose the village. However, once it begins, Yuji quickly realizes that it won't hold and desperately searches for a stronger barrier. One doesn't seem to exist though, so Yuji creates a spell that directly counters the black flames that have begun emerging from the barrier. The slime have already accepted their demise, but Yuji uses the new spell. His other barriers are gone, leaving only the new isolation array, which seems to be holding up well. However, Yuji realizes that his magic power is dissipating quickly and wonders how long he will last. After a few moments, some of the pressure is relieved and Yuji is glad to see that he was able to hold out just long enough. They then return to the village to see that they had all been worried after he didn't return and several large explosions were heard. Yuji doesn't take any of the credit for some reason and just says that he is glad that the meteors didn't hit the village. The weather goes back to normal and the townspeople celebrate. Yuji is the guest of honor for supplying them with enough firewood to last a lifetime and for eliminating the boars in their herb field. After all that, Yuji gets to taste the chef's world-class Rashaya herb stew, and he has an otherworldly experience that leads to him crying into unconsciousness. After waking up, Yuji studies the text from Messiah Village to find that a spell destroys all the writing. He manages to find one that still has text and sees that it contains a list of people that the Blue Moon of Salvation were after. At the very bottom though, Yuji is shocked to see a name he wasn't expecting. We then get a glimpse of a couple of assassins after completing a job, and see that one of them has the same list Yuji does. Another look at the list shows that the person at the bottom is actually the adventurer Yuji. Thanks for watching part 2. Any other parts that are available will be pinned in the comment below.